Here's Dick Morris responding to the media hypocrisy about Ted Cruz.
Taking a family trip to Cancun while the weather turned awful in Texas and
Yeah, that's what he was doing.
many people lost their power. He joins us now exclusively by Skype to discuss.
Exclusively by Skype, because that matters. In the same seat. Well, we were sitting here, freezing our patooties off in this very fireplace, making s'mores. Our butler his teeth were chattering so loud, I could barely hear the applause machine my wife bought me for Christmas.
To discuss the situation. Senator,
how
are you doing?
He's doing great, and so are you, and this is great. This is great. Man, this is great. Smile, Dick. I'm talking to the guy over here.
I'm doing terrific. Great to be with you, Dick.
Yeah. I think we might have another drop.
Good. So what's
Good.
your side of the story?
Yeah, what's your side of the story?
Well, sure. As you know,
Well, yeah, let me get started. Let me back up and tell you how cold it was and how the power went off.
Texas this week has been hit by 2 horrific winter storms. It
Yeah, we know.
knocked out power for some 4 million Texans.
So I was like, fuck this, I'm out.
Among them was our family. And so we spent 2 days with no heat, no power. And after a couple of days, our daughters...
No. That's a lie, because literally your daughter's friends came over because yours was the house with power.
Said
they didn't have 2 days without power. It's bullshit.
Look, let's go somewhere warm. School's just been canceled. Let's get some friends from school. Let's go somewhere warm.
And I was like, well, let's see, Florida, anywhere in America outside the polar vortex that's happening. Nah, screw it. Mexico. That's not bad optics for a Republican in the post-Trump era.
Heidi and I are parents, and so we said yes, and so we booked.
Yeah, that's what you do when your kids, when your 11 and 10-year-old go, let's fly to Mexico. We go, yeah, oh yeah. You know why he said yes? Because it wasn't their idea. It was his idea.
Tickets the next.
He invited his buddy from college. He flew down and met them there. He stayed. His buddy from college stayed with Heidi and the kids while Ted flew back after he was busted.
Day we flew out the next day.
Yeah, Hawaii would have been better. That's a good point, Lynette. Hawaii literally is still America, at least.
My plan had been to work remotely, as I've been doing, as we've all been doing for a long time.
Yeah, that was the goal, to work remotely. Work on my tan remotely.
Time in the age of COVID. But I got to tell you, even as I started flying out, I started having second thoughts about leaving, just because Texas is in.
Just because they served white and it was fish on the plane. But I was like, I like red with my fish. And I was back and forth. I'm like, we're going to Mexico. Do those rules even apply? Can I get a margarita? Why are we not flying to Vista del Lago? Vista del Lago, why?
This is in crisis right now. A lot of Texans are hurting. And
that didn't occur to you until you were on the goddamn plane in business class.
And I think it's important for me to be here physically. And so I...
Physically, yeah. Mentally, I'm still at the beach.
Ended up changing my flight and coming back the next day. I'm back in Texas now, and focusing really on the issues I was focused on before leaving briefly for that trip, which is why the grid went down and how we can make sure this never happens again. I got to tell you, a lot of Texans are pissed off
that Ted Cruz is their senator and
the energy capital of the world, we think the greatest state and the greatest country of the world, could lose power, not be able to turn on our lights and our heat. And I think there's serious questions that need to be answered so this doesn't happen again.
I have an answer. I have an answer. Your state is run by fuck-ups.
Yeah.
I mean, the real issue is that this is the first time a natural disaster has had these kind of implications because of the Green New Deal. If they had...
The what? The Green New Deal hasn't been implemented? What are you talking about?
Hadn't come in and replaced your coal and your oil and your gas with wind turbines that freeze.
They didn't replace coal and oil and gas. They added wind turbines. They didn't take shit out.
and solar panels that don't work in the clouds.
Yes, that's always the problem with the solar panels don't work in the clouds. You have to put them on the ground.
This wouldn't have happened. If they replace your energy with renewable energy that won't renew.
This is the argument now. Shit that hasn't been implemented in a state that refuses to implement it, that's run by people who hate the technology even when it works, and don't bother to take care of their shit because it breaks down because they're ineffectively running it. That's indicative of the technology itself. I see.
Well, I think you're right that there are a lot of government mandates and subsidies that have distorted the energy.
Yes, subsidies. That's the problem. There are all these, I mean, how can you blame the people of Texas for taking those sweet, sweet government subsidies?
Market. You know, Texas is the #1 producer of wind energy in the country, and about 25% of our power
and yet their grid is #2.
Comes from wind energy. The questions you're raising are very good questions because during the height of the storms, that 25% dropped all the way down to 2% as the turbines froze as they wouldn't turn. The solar.
Why is that, Ted? They work in the Netherlands. They work in Canada. They work in Minnesota. Why don't they work in Texas when it gets cold? They work in Switzerland. They work in Sweden.
The solar panels, likewise, with the bad weather, were not producing energy. Now, to be fair, other sources of energy also had challenges, both coal and natural gas.
And nuclear, because it wasn't any of the sources that were the problem. It was the delivery system. The plants that they used to distribute them were shut down, and nobody turned them on. And by the time they went to do it, a lot of the gauges were frozen in the natural gas facilities.
When the grid went down, some of the natural gas production plant depended on energy, and so it became a self-reinforcing process.
Because it was run by assholes.
That's why I think it's a good thing that Governor Abbott has called for the Texas.
They don't lube in Texas. It's very dry and painful. That's the let's not lube our windmills bill that Ted Cruz pushed through through when he was a state senator. Just really came back to bite him in the tuchus.
This legislature to study what it is that caused the grid not to be able to handle this surge in demand. And
they know exactly what it was. Now deal with how they're going to pay for it. Because here's what's going to happen. This is the most dickish thing of this whole thing. Is people of Texas are getting these like $8, $10, $20, $100,000 power bills because of how the power grid is run down there. And what they're going to try to use is the emergency funds from the federal government to pay the energy providers so that the taxpayers in Texas aren't hit with this bill. So we are going to pay the energy providers for gouging.
And to make sure that we prevent it from ever occurring again.
You can't, you won't, you're useless.
Senator, I'm glad you came on Newsmax so that we could give you a chance to present your point of view. Sounds perfectly reasonable to me. It sounds
it's very reasonable.
Like the Democrats are trying to get even with you for standing up for election integrity and for Donald Trump during the
election integrity? What does this have to do with him fucking off to Cancun? Honest to God, like Dick Morris, this is the same thing with the Ukraine phone call. The Ukraine phone call, all that debacle happened. That wasn't related to Russia. Literally, the Mueller report had unfortunately put a lot of that to bed because Rod Rosenstein wouldn't let him look at the finances. The Mueller report could only go so far. They put their report out, and Trump dodged the bullet. He didn't get impeached based on the Mueller report. So a couple of days later, drunk on his own power, he calls Ukraine and starts muscling the new president around and does something illegal. It was all hubris. That's what got him impeached. The same thing is true of Ted Cruz. The fuck does this have to do with the election? There was nothing related to the election that drove Ted Cruz in the middle of a goddamn snowstorm affecting his own state to Mexico with his family. Yes, Morris is on Newsmax. Yes, that's Dick Morris.
During the last few months.
Well, I got to say, Nick, it is a thing how the networks are obsessed about my one-day trip with my family. And
it wasn't a one-day trip, Dick. It's one day because you got caught. You were going to stay through the weekend. You admitted it.
Yet can't somehow seem to cover Governor Andrew Cuomo and the really horrific policies that led to
Can't cover it. It's all over the news.
Thousands of COVID deaths in New York State, where you've got members of his administration now admitting they were lying to regulators about those policies. I think.
Yeah, it's in the news. I saw all that. I saw that on MSNBC. Meanwhile, why did you fuck off to Cancun?
The news media has an interesting way of assessing what are the real crises facing the country.
Thank you, Ted. You know, you get the truth on Newsmax.
Hi, I'm a...
That was the edit? Thanks, Dick. Jesus Christ.